Hey guys, so this video didn't originally have a cold open, but a couple things occurred to me after recording the review in the two separate sessions that we did so. What follows is us going through Voorhees for about 40 minutes. It's about 20 minutes with the guys, and then it's about 20 more minutes of me diving deeper into the technical aspects of Voorhees. And I wanted to make a couple things clear. One, there are going to be spoilers throughout the video, so if you haven't seen Voorhees, I would not watch this review yet. Once you do watch it, then come back here and check out the review. I'll go ahead and put a link to the original video for Voorhees in the comments down below. But some people might ask, why are you going that much into detail about Voorhees, Some people even working on the film have said it's just a fan film. And it's like, well, here's the thing. In my opinion, I don't think that there's anything wrong with striving to have a high quality film, even if it is just a fan film. I think that you can do things to make it look high quality, make it look professional, and some of the things that were done in Voorhees I think could be improved upon. So I go in deep on that. So just wanted to clarify as to why. Again, I fully acknowledge I am going to be working on Dylan's New Nightmare coming up, and so I fully acknowledge and expect that there are going to be people out there that are going to do just as technical a breakdown of Dylan's New Nightmare when it comes out. I fully welcome it. I, as a filmmaker, always want to try and improve, and if there are people that can tell me things that will help me improve, I'm always going to try and be open to it. It just depends on how it's phrased, obviously. If people are just being trolls and they're like, well, I'm just trying to help, that's something different. So thank you very much, and without further ado, here's our Voorhees review.
Have you checked the children?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the horror show. I'm Cecil, Laird, Robert, Duell,
And Jaime and Fuego here.
and we are here to complete the loop on a project that we have been following from the very beginning. We are here to finally do a review for Voorhees, the Friday the 13th fan film that is a full-length feature by writer, producer,
Yeah.
cinematographer, Cody Falk,
Jack of all trades,
editor,
man.
basically the one-man show. And guys, the reason why we're covering it is a fewfold. So first off, the movie dropped just a little bit ago on Halloween for the first time after being in production for like the better part of like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
After 3 different crowdfunding campaigns and just a lot of updates and things like that
And
we
also-
were all about. You
Yeah,
know?
and also lots of ups and downs with having to, getting snowed in and not being able to, finish certain shots and stuff like that. Like, Cody's perseverance with this project I thought was really admirable and awesome, and the fact that he had a vision, he expanded from a short to a feature, and sticking the course, props in every regard to that. And,
This is absolutely, as again, I'm going to be, very diplomatic but very honest with this review because I am a, upcoming fan filmmaker myself. Technically, Fuego and I are both fan filmmakers because we made Sweet, which was a fan film of American Vampire.
It was.
We made that kind of in 2016 when it was
Has
a
it
little
been
bit
that-
before
has
the
it been that
yeah,
long?
it's
My
been
God,
before
this new glut
before
of,
this new glut of fan
yeah.
films, but we are going to be making Dylan's New Nightmare, and so I want to make sure that this isn't viewed as, just an unnecessary dig session or anything like that, because there are aspects of the movie that I liked, there are aspects of the movie that I felt could have been improved upon, and I'm going to tackle that in a separate section of this review. So, because of the fact that I'm going to be directing Dylan's New Nightmare, I'm going to kind of do a separate thing, talk about the parts of the film that didn't quite work for me and use clips of the movie to illustrate my points. But first, I want to make sure we discuss the things that worked for us.
Yeah.
Okay, and for me, the couple things that worked for me were Jason. I thought he largely worked for me for the movie. I thought that the kills ranged from good to great. I thought they did a good job with the gore. I liked the fact that they didn't cut away, and I liked certain shots, certain Jason reveal shots, I think that a lot of that was done pretty well, and there were just some aspects that I think could be improved upon. But like Fuego said, I mean, the determination and the stick-to-itiveness of this crew to see this through over that amount of time,
Despite adversity.
that has to be lauded. It really does. Like, you know, a lot of people attempt to make features, you know, movies, period, short films, what have you, that fail, let alone a full-length version of your vision. So all of that needs to be applauded. I just don't think that they necessarily achieved what they were attempting to achieve. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just kind of step aside and let you guys talk your piece about the movie before I kind of jump in with the clips and all that stuff. So, Robert, why don't you go ahead and take over from here, and I'll just kind of sit here on the side and listen.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the positives, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, I did enjoy pretty much most of the kills in this, especially towards the end. There was one basically eye gouging, head crush kind of bit. I dug that for some reason. Although every time I see those kills, it just gets me. But the effectiveness, yes, of Jason, I liked him, but I didn't love him. Like, that's the thing. I don't know, because at the times the Jason seemed to move too quickly. But it
depends on the iteration they're looking at. I mean, he moved
I
pretty
know.
quickly in the remake, you know,
Yeah.
at times. So
I don't know. I'm not gonna bullshit here. Like, my positives for this movie are pretty slim, and that pretty much goes down to just the gore and the kills. In all honesty, other than that, that's pretty much most of my positive points.
Okay. Well, I actually have a fair share of positives because of the fact that, you know, I always have to try to look at a piece of art as just well-roundedly, objectively as possible, and not just based on the determination aspect. And because, I mean, hell, not everybody liked Swede. We've definitely got our fair share of shit-talking comments about that, and yet we had to add a third day of shooting because of weather and things of that nature. But I honestly, even though maybe it was mixed a little overbearingly at times, I really enjoyed the score. I also enjoyed the initial reveal of Jason walking out of the water when, you know, we first get to that point, and like he's just
We didn't actually see that.
Well,
We saw him pop out of the water, and then we saw him
and then well
on
he
land.
stood and it's a no.
No, he did not
No.
walk out of the water.
Well,
I've watched it twice now.
Oh, well, I mean, we see a mask in the water, and then we see him standing in the water.
He stands
he
up
rises
from very
up
far
and
away,
everything,
Okay.
but we
yeah.
don't see him actually walk
Okay,
out of the
walking
water.
out of the water. Well, okay.
The reason I point that out is because that was one of the things that stuck out to me. You first see him pop up, you see him from very far away. For some reason, they didn't come in close, and so you just see him from really far away as
I
his
thought it
first
was
reveal.
I thought it was
And then
decently
it cuts to
framed,
him in the woods, so it was like
I
kind
thought-
of an odd way to reveal him for the first time. in my opinion.
From what I remember, having just watched it this morning, I liked the reveal.
Fair
and
enough,
So I will,
fair enough. No,
I
fair
will
enough.
I will contend that. As far as kills go, I thought that they did range from some stuff that goes on off screen, obviously, and you know, that is as can be expected when you're dealing with, you know, limited budgeting and things like that. But the hammer kill specifically of our wannabe Jay from Jay and Silent Bob kind of kid, and it was probably my favorite kill of the film, and I enjoyed that. You know, some of the shot choices I did like. I know there was some derision from you guys off camera before we started about the campfire scene. I liked the lighting of the campfire scene and the ominousness of that and some of the stuff that went down there. The score was overpowering, I already mentioned that. I'm not the biggest Jason fan at the end of the day, and I think for that reason, the whatever rose-colored glasses that I wear, I'm not going to be as enthused about this as some other people, but also I think I'm less judgmental because I'm not as big of a Jason fan. So it kind of goes both ways in that particular regard. So, yeah, I had issues with the acting, as I did during the previous trailer, and we'll get into that. But, and also you know, everything else that I guess I could say, you know, can probably be, you know, mentioned later on. But I still liked certain aspects of this, and for that reason, yeah, I mean, props for finishing a feature, for God's sake.
Well,
Holy
yeah,
crap.
like you can't deny that and everything. They worked hard. You can always tell like they put the effort into making this and trying to get this out and everything. But it just comes down to still the final product still ended up coming off a little flat. And like what?
Oh, I do also want to chime in and say I like the setup of not having to deal with camp counselors. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe,
we talked about that off screen a little bit.
Yeah, maybe the execution at times didn't, like, as far as the actual script itself, but the concept of doing something different with bank robbers, with different people ending up in Crystal Lake instead of just same old. That's why I like Jason X so much. That's why it didn't really have Jason in it, but that's why I like Jason Goes to Hell so much, because you can't just make the same thing over and over and over and over. You have to deviate to some degree, and for that reason, even if I didn't like the execution at every turn or whatever, I still applaud trying to do something different, even if I didn't think it always worked.
Oh yeah, and like this, we kind of briefly we talked about this a little bit off camera. And I had mentioned this. It felt more of a I'm kind of sorry to say it, but a poorly written bank heist movie with Jason just kind of thrown in as just trying to get in a Jason movie. Like that's
almost like a retrofit, like they did with the Hellraiser.
That's too. Yeah, it's basically like Hellraiser Inferno. It was a cop movie with Hellraiser thrown into it.
It was a heistless bank heist movie.
That too.
Yeah. Orchestrating a bank heist on a budget.
Of course.
It's just impossible.
But the movie was a little. Well, I'll get into it. I feel like the movie was a little overlong. They could have shortened the movie.
It would have been. It would have been
used that budget to make that scene. You know what
exactly,
I mean?
And that I think would have been a lot better if they cut this down to even a 45-minute.
30 to 45 minutes.
Exactly, that would have worked out so much better for them. Again, with budget and for how long you guys have been trying to get this off the ground. I think that probably would have worked better. And not to mention, I'm sorry, but it's the characters. The characters are very unbelievable.
So we're obviously
segueing. Sorry. Yeah.
What didn't work for us?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. But the characters on a bank heist were extremely unbelievable. You're gonna tell me that these groups of people successfully pulled off a bank heist and only one guy got shot in the gut? I can't believe on these characters, especially.
Well, they did the bank heist and then they took a detour to go kidnap.
That's
someone.
what it was, yeah.
Although the person got shot at the heist.
Yes,
they specify.
I know, that's what I'm saying. They did a whole separate thing in between the two. And it's like, oh, he's just been bleeding while you were doing the kidnapping.
Yeah. And I don't.
Although he wasn't with them, he was with the other two guys.
I know, but it's still, presumably they all started at the same heist. You get shot in the gut,
and then later on you're walking around perfectly fine.
Which is honestly one of the worst places from what I've heard about blood loss. And
getting shot in the gut,
shot in the gut compared to the shoulder or even various other places in the chest. Like the gut as far as the bleed out aspect goes and stuff. But, yeah.
So we'll throw it back over to you real quick.
As far as negatives go, I was really critical of the acting in the previous trailer and stuff like that, and it was more so line delivery than anything else, and I just don't want to, heap loads of crap or anything like that. And, it's and that's not back on the script either. It was just, it was just stilted delivery, unfortunately, at times, and.
Fuego's being careful because, in all transparency, when we did our reaction, one of the cast members did not react well to it.
But
so Fuego's trying to be very, very careful,
judicious, as I said earlier.
And it's funny because I just have to chime in real quick because the person we were actually critical of, I said this off camera, the person we were critical of
ended up with
the
most
in the trailer. I thought he was actually ended up being one of the best actors of the film. So it just so happened that trailer used all of his worst parts from the movie, in my opinion. Again, just in my opinion. But he ended up being the strongest actor of the entire film, ironically enough, in retrospect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was unfortunately just certain lines of dialogue, like taking naked selfies, that I don't know how stuff like that can be delivered in an amusing fashion.
Girl,
yeah, and also, the donut bit where there is like a lengthy pause of about 10 to 15 seconds.
Hey, Chief. Pass me the donuts.
Save me a jelly.
Yeah, sure, Chief.
And I know it was
line delivery.
I know that And it is. It's not easy to, humor all too often is all about inflection, not necessarily what you're saying. You know, it's not what you say, it's how you say it in a lot of ways. And that's where acting, like, I've only acted in, like, one thing, you know, and I don't even think it was that great, you know, but that's the thing. Like, it is tough for a reason. It's a craft for a reason, and that's not to, you know, like, piss on all the people within this. Also, the fact that we're in New Jersey, and we've got, like, you know, a sheriff and like the deputy, presumably his accent wasn't as deliberate and
cops,
obvious. For New Jersey, it just didn't make sense, especially with one of the I guess indigenous isn't the proper word, but, you know, one of the locals, one of the natives, you know, who's, like, living up there, also of that same ilk and vein. It just felt very, very out of place for whatever reason. It was very obviously a deliberate decision by Cody to have those sort of accents. I doubt they were Southern people. They were doing those accents for whatever reason. And I can understand, you know, transplant to, you know, various areas of the country to find work and things like that. But they seemed very much like, you know, supposed to be local of the Crystal Lake area because they know about the legend and all this other stuff. So that was some other gripes, unfortunately. I mean, once again, concept great, execution of script, and just logicality of characters. And also, why are we kidnapping somebody from a bank who works there when, unfortunately, there wasn't any, like, you could have taken any hostage. She wasn't there as a witness.
Yeah, they picked her up afterwards.
I feel like it was a specific, like target / choice because of her relationship with one of the robbers, maybe. It's really all
well,
that
because
I could,
she used
to,
you know? Supposedly she used to date the Derek guy. So
maybe
that's where that was, because he knew her schedule and where she would be on that one day a year, all this bullshit.
Well, they talk about their past together.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah.
And there was actually that was one of the better acted scenes, I must admit, where they were kind of hashing out him getting locked up and their past and how
that was
you could tell that they still had a romantic connection. And it was just so effed up by the you know, circumstances that brought them back together that it was probably not going to work. Even though, I mean, she's like, I'll go to bat for you. I'll say that they tricked you or they manipulated you or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, it was there was definitely, as far as the robbers go, there was far better acting, I think, from the crew of bikers in comparison with the others who were in the car, as far as the ones who did the kidnapping or the you know, I guess you could still call it a kidnapping, even though they're adults. But yeah, the whole cemetery bit of taking those two chicks. So, anything else negative?
Honestly, there's some continuity issues. Personally, again, they're just they're small little nitpick things, but it's noticeable. So we'll take going back to the cemetery scene. Our one girl pulls out a bouquet of flowers to hand to her to take up to the grave. Originally about yay small, about yay wide. She gets out of the car, and now they've doubled in size as she's going up there. It's like, even those small little details, you can't keep your flowers consistent. And
At one point, there's a cop's shirt gets bloody and gets blood on it, and then the next shot, it's completely clean again.
And then also too, after one of our girls that was kidnapped gets away, she's running, she's still tied up in one scene, then she's walking through a field, completely freed up. Next scene cuts back, she's tied back up. It's just little things like that, and that just makes the real inconsistency in the editing and just the overall film. Because that's pulling me out right there, and I immediately noticed. I don't know, but again, like I said, like I give the props and everything like that. It's like for doing the work and getting the film made for however long it took. Obviously, I'm not doubting it wasn't hard, but I personally wouldn't be happy with this final product.
It does feel like a first cut still.
It does, yeah.
It does feel like a first edit, you know.
Yeah,
it
like
feels
we were saying earlier, like if it was cut down to like a good 35-45 minutes, and you added in put back into that budget for instead of the full length movie, I think it would have worked out a lot better. Maybe especially with location. If you're trying to shoot with supposedly being at Camp Coastal Lake, why are you shooting in abandoned warehouse or abandoned farm? That's
it didn't look very camp-like.
Exactly. And
Well, it was supposed to be kind of beside the campgrounds, right? I mean,
Is it?
to be the
I
devil's
thought
advocate? I mean,
thought
hey, that's
it,
what
I
I'm,
thought it
that's
was
what I'm
supposed
assuming.
to take place because
No, I don't think
because
so.
the one guy, Blaine, the white hair frosty dude, he mentioned basically about like this campground and shit like that.
Well,
So
they said,
that's-
well, they never. I don't even think they ever mentioned a campground. at
Well,
any
no,
time
'cause he
in
Well,
the
the
knew-
cops say they're in
Well, the
Crystal
cops
Lake.
do, but
yeah,
the guys
the
who were
Blaine,
like,
that Blaine guy who
But the
sent them there
robbers-
to, he knew what the campsite was. Apparently, nobody else did.
I mean, the extent of what he said though is this
Yeah.
place has been abandoned for years. We'll be safe there.
Mhm.
That's pretty much all that they said. So.
But they
And,
made it sound like it was the camp, but it was actually, just a rundown farm. That's what it
Yeah.
seems like.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, like somewhere nearby, like not maybe on the campground's official.
Mhm.
But I mean, I don't know, man. I still like a few of the kills. I like
Oh,
the
the
con-
gun- yeah,
I still
don't
like a
worry, the
few of the
kills
kills.
were good.
I like the concept of doing something different. And just to backtrack once again, I know you guys weren't as fond of the score. I really liked the score. I thought it was very professional sounding, orchestral driving sort of shizzle.
I think
maybe
it didn't match
maybe it
more
didn't
often
match
than not.
certain scenes, and maybe it was overpowering as far as the audio mix goes. But
Well, that's
Could
a
you
deal.
go from dramatic
It made
to
certain-
whimsical frolicking through a field back to dramatic?
yeah,
And, like,
That's just one of the things that I think I was gonna hit on during my section. I'm still gonna do that. So, do you guys have any last words before I kind of jump into the stuff I'm gonna talk about?
this is more so on just the final prosthetics and effects of Jason. What we got, I would just say, even the final reveal of the face, it wasn't. I didn't find it very effective, or very.
it's only for a brief little bit, and it's
I understand,
obviously
but
a nod to
I don't know.
later-
Like,
later
I
incarnations.
don't know.
of
I'm
him.
I'm not even gonna touch this subject right now. I'll just leave it.
I honestly didn't mind it. You know, I didn't think it looked too terrible, and you know, like Jason in his just hulking presence alone, I thought Jason didn't really look any insanely worse than in a lot of other fan films that we've seen lately. You know,
I
so
just didn't find it very scary.
I feel like he was missing a lot of sound that would have augmented quite a bit.
that's definitely something I can concur with. So. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna dive into that and more, you guys. I'm gonna jump over to me talking more about some of the technical aspects that kind of brought me out of the film, just why I wasn't as big a fan as opposed to just talking blindly. This is a special Friday the 13th episode, but we had to review Voorhees because we've been following the project and we have to be honest about it. So I'm gonna just take some footage to back up what I'm about to talk about. So again, more than anything, we want to say kudos to the crew for pulling off a full-length feature with what they had.
You can't say not.
So
They did it.
I think they fell a little bit short of their goal personally, and I'm going to talk about why. But I think ultimately it is a valiant effort. You know,
Especially with some of the actors, you can tell that they were trying. They wanted to make a good movie, but they just didn't necessarily know how to fully deliver it. Especially with the lines and emotions. That was the biggest thing.
Well, it's a massive undertaking, and you know, maybe a lot for one particular person, you know, perhaps. But I mean, hey, if you're a visionary, man, you just gotta forge forward and get it done. So. Yeah.
So yeah, guys. All right, now over to me for those other thoughts.
Okay, guys. So the first thing I want to reiterate is that, again, Cody and his crew should be lauded for all of their efforts. Putting together a full-length feature is not an easy task, let alone a short film. Having done a fan film in the past, I know what kind of, troubles and hiccups can arise along the way. And having never made a full-length feature myself, I can't imagine what sort of extra hurdles you have to go through while doing that. So it's obviously a ton of work, so credit where credit is due. Getting a full-length feature done deserves some credit. So the reason that I'm doing this separate section where I'm going to be sort of breaking it down a little bit is because I am an aspiring filmmaker myself. We've been making shorts on the channel for a little while, and obviously we have Dylan's New Nightmare coming up. And so as someone that is trying to make his way doing that sort of thing, as I watch things, movies, whether they be fan films or traditional, theatrical releases, I watch them all with a sort of critical eye that could also be considered sort of a behind-the-scenes eye, right? I know a little bit about how the sausage is made. So I kind of know some things, some rules about making stuff. And so when I watched this, there were just some things that jumped out at me. So I wanted to talk about those. And I'm not going to harp on anything in particular. Just wanted to kind of go through it. Again, on this channel, we always do our reviews where we break it down, like the story, the acting, the effects, the technical aspects, being the cinematography, the sound design, the actual music choices, all of that stuff is stuff that we break down in our reviews normally, so I'm going to do it here as well. I just wanted to kind of separate myself from Robert and Fuego because I didn't want to seem like it was a pile-on situation or anything like that. I want to not only tell you kind of some of the issues that I had with the film, but also show you some clips. So enough rolling out the red carpet, I'm just going to kind of jump into it. And first I'm going to talk about the story. The story kind of breaks one of the cardinal rules of filmmaking, which is telling, not showing. You always want to show, don't tell in film if you possibly can. That makes it more visceral for the viewer. And because the movie starts off with this group of characters on the run from a crime that isn't even super clarified until later in the film, it's a little bit odd, and you feel displaced from them because you didn't see what happened. The only way you know what happened is through dialogue, where the characters are literally telling people what happened rather than it being shown to us. So
what the fuck happened? I'll be fine. Don't worry about me.
I do realize that this might be a budgetary issue, like shooting an actual bank heist might not have been the easiest thing, but my sort of reasoning behind my thoughts here are, if you see that that's going to be the case, then I think you and the producers need to sit down and decide, what is worth our budget? Is it worth stretching this idea out in this way into a full-length feature, or do we cut down the feature, which I think the feature definitely could have used some cutting. This really did kind of feel like a first cut to me, but nonetheless, you could cut down the feature and use some of the budget you saved from skipping some of that stuff and maybe put it towards something that resembles a heist scene, or at least show them running away from a building. Even if you don't show the actual heist, show something a little bit more that gets us more invested in these characters rather than them already being split up and apparently in between the heist and or they kidnap the girl and then the heist happens that we don't see, or the heist happens and then they stop to kidnap a girl on their way out of town. I don't know. All of that is kind of unclear. That's part of the problem with the story. It's a bit convoluted because we didn't see what actually happened. I guess you could say it's pretty straightforward. These criminals run across Jason, but we need to understand how they got there, why they got there, their motivations for being there and getting away from there. But we're missing kind of a lot of that to me. There also could have been some further character development, I feel like. So that would have informed a lot of your actors' performances more so than I think they had the ability to do. So what I'm saying there is the acting was a little bit stretched, or their talents were stretched a little bit, I should say.
Look, Travis, Blaine said to keep the Jeep out of sight when we got here. Why don't you go do that?
Whatever. You can get the bitches out the car.
The material, as kind of convoluted as it was, the way the storytelling was, it was up to the actors to let everyone know what had happened up to that point, while also, acting and developing their own characters. And that's hard enough to do when the material focuses on it, but when the material is relying on you to tell the actual story, then, that can be tough for even the most seasoned actors. So actors that are kind of just getting going in their film careers, that's going to be tough for them as well, obviously. So I think as far as acting goes, while it was one of the parts of the movie that I think could have been improved, I feel like all of the actors did their best. I absolutely feel like they gave it their all, but some of them just I don't think were quite seasoned enough to pull off the material they were given. And again, I think if there was more character development in the script, then I think they could have had more to draw on to build their own characters in their mind in order to deliver the lines in a more convincing way. Unfortunately, some of the acting did feel like it was more line deliveries as opposed to genuine conversations going on.
Hey. What the hell is that old man talking about?
It's ancient history. Don't worry about it. Just an old ghost story.
Moving on to the camera work, I was a little confused by this, honestly, because there wasn't even a cinematographer listed in the credits. No cinematographer was credited. I'm guessing that Cody probably was the one behind the camera. He's listed as the director, but that's not the same thing. You know, the director isn't the cameraman as well. The cinematographer is a completely separate job, so if he was wearing both hats, then he should have credited himself as well. I think there were some strong points of the cinematography, and then there were some weak points to the cinematography. The strong points were a lot of the Jason stuff. I think he had a lot of, good shots for Jason. I think when Jason was attacking, I think the rawness of the camera work there was very good as well. However, there were some things that I think could have used some improvement. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the fact that sometimes the camera placement just kind of didn't make sense. One part in particular where two characters were interacting and one kind of walks away from the other one and talks over his shoulder.
Why didn't you tell us?
Look, I needed everyone focused, okay? Including you.
The framing of the camera angles didn't quite make sense. It made it look like he was talking to no one instead of the character he was actually talking to. So that was one thing. I think that another big issue was that the film was told predominantly with medium and close-up shots. So it was a lot of, waist and up or shoulders and up. And as a result of that, you start to get a little lost as to where the characters are in relation to one another. So most times you want to get a wide, a medium, and close-ups if you can for every scene that you have. The wide establishes where everyone is in this particular scene. They do that a couple of times in the movie. They do have an establishing like a few times, but most of the time they don't, and it's just medium and close-up shots. So characters are like looking at each other, and you have to kind of surmise where everyone is, but you're building the scene in your head instead of showing us, okay, here's the scene and this is where everyone is. So when the action starts happening, you know where everyone is in relation to each other and you can be deep in the action. In this case, some of the action that takes place, I got lost, and it was tough to follow because I didn't know exactly where everyone was in relationship to each other outside of just their eye lines. And that's not enough all the time. The next thing I wanted to talk about, just briefly, is he used a lot of low angles, up on the other characters, and I think that was overused in some of the wrong spots at times. There's times where it's appropriate. If it's a killer and you have that low angle on them, then great. It makes them look big, intimidating, awesome. Another time you can use it is when a character is being chased. So if someone's being run through the woods and they pause in the woods and you have a low angle and they're like looking around, that low angle adds to the confusion of the situation. Or another good time they used in this movie was when the bearded sort of Ralph character of the whole group, the warning character of the whole group, towards the part where he gets attacked, he's out trying to investigate something and they use that low angle for him where he's like looking around and something could come from any direction. That's an appropriate use of it. But there were a lot of other times where it was just conversations between people were happening and it was angles from underneath their chin, and those are generally considered kind of just unflattering angles, especially for your female actresses. It doesn't make any actor really look good when you have that lower angle, unless you're doing it with a purpose, for storytelling purposes. So there were a lot of times where it was just conversation, it was from below, and it's just, you want to try and avoid that if you possibly can. Again, I know a lot of this is going to sound like nitpicks to a lot of you guys, but these are genuine like filmmaking things that I think these guys could benefit from knowing. Again, I want them to succeed even more so than they have for Voorhees. I know that a lot of people like Voorhees, even if it's more of a secondary character, B-plot character. But nonetheless, people were excited, and I understand that excitement. But again, I'm just watching it from a filmmaking eye, and I'm telling them these things because these are things that are easy for them to fix for their next project, which can be even more badass. The other big thing that I wanted to hit on as far as camera work goes is the 180-degree rule. This is something that anyone that's gone to film class knows about, and people know about whether they realize it or not, because it is sort of an unwritten filmmaking rule that you abide by because it's how films have been made forever, and it prevents confusion for the audience. So the 180-degree rule is essentially where when you're making a scene, you are creating a 180-degree line that you don't want to pass. Like if there's two characters talking to each other, right? So if these are the two characters and the camera is on this side, right, on your guys' side, you want to show an over-the-shoulder shot of this guy, and then when you go to this guy, you want to show an over-the-shoulder shot. And so you do that, and they're talking to each other, and so you have one camera angle here and one camera angle here. So what you've done is you've created a 180-degree line right down the middle of both of these characters. And you can put the camera anywhere on that side of the 180-degree line. You can pop out here for a wide, you can pop over here for a skew angle, you can go back over the shoulder here, over the shoulder here. You cannot cross that 180-degree line on either side without confusing the audience, their brain, for a brief second. It doesn't necessarily, for some people, break the flow of storytelling.
Don't think I fucking won't!
But subconsciously, your brain picks up on that because you've now established something new. And sometimes people will point to 180-degree breaks when like another character enters, and that's not the same thing. If another character is entering, you got to reestablish the scene a little bit. And so the 180 is pliable at that point. But the 180-degree line, when there's just two characters, you want to abide by that. And there were a number of times that the 180-degree rule was broken in this film. And obviously I'm showing you some of these examples just to back up what I'm saying. Again, this is a filmmaking technique that is easily fixed in their next project. But it's something that you want to really abide by because it's something that people's brains, it like triggers them for just a second. Like, wait, that's a little, where were we? Okay, now I'm over here. Okay. It just takes them a second to catch up when you don't need to put their brains through that, when you can keep them focused on the story. So again, that's the last thing with camera work is drone shots can be amazing. They can add production value, but you want to make sure you're not overusing them or utilizing unnecessary drone shots. I think you can get away with saying most of the drone shots in this movie work, but there's at least one that was just drone shot for drone shot's sake. It was after characters had already entered a building, then they cut outside to a drone shot of just the roof of the building, and it's like that served no storytelling purposes whatsoever. So just make sure the drone shots you're using are actually serving the story. For the most part they did, but there was at least one, maybe two, that felt superfluous to the story. Moving on to the music, I'm going to try and wrap this up. I know we've already been talking a while about this. Some of the music was okay, but the problem is the music most of the time was extremely overbearing and loud. Music was so loud that I was focusing more on the music rather than the scene that it was telling. And what that also did was it made me notice the score so much more that I noticed the scenes where the score did not match the scene as well as it should have. There were times where the beat was just too fast and it was just people walking through the forest when it felt like it should have been a chase scene. Sometimes the score just didn't feel like it matched what we were showing on screen, and it was so loud that it takes you out of the movie where you're like, wait, I'm not watching what this score is telling me right now. So you just got to be careful about that. The score was well done, but some of the tracks didn't match and it was all a little bit too loud. Just be careful about that kind of thing. Sound design was good for the most part, especially the squidginess of some of the kills. I like that, but there's definitely a little bit of blowout in a couple of the scenes for certain characters, especially with the bad girl robber that wasn't the blonde. I don't know any of the actors' names. I greatly apologize about that, but the one that lasted longer than most of them, that wasn't sort of the main kidnapped girl, when she was in the police car and then Jason attacked and everything, all of her dialogue was peaking hugely, like really overblown, and I could tell that they brought it down in post so it didn't peak people's like speakers, but you can tell that it is blown out audio compared to the rest of the audio.
You're fucking genius, man. Fucking genius.
Fucking assholes! You just use me to get the money? What kind of cops are you?
The rich kind?
There's a man killing people out there! What don't you understand?
Dispatch. This is Deputy Bobby Walker. Come in.
We need to get out of here!
So they needed to either re-record or at the very least remaster that part of the edit to get that audio a little bit more level. The other weird thing is that some of the Foley sounds felt like they were missing. Just a couple times, and it felt like, wait, there should be sound here. And so that kind of brings you out also. For instance, the one of the cops drank from the flask a lot, and every time he pulled the flask out and started drinking, there was no like or like we
just gonna leave Oscar back there?
Crows gotta eat.
You gotta add those sounds to sell the reality of the movie. And yeah, it's not a huge thing, but again, these little things, they all add up to a tremendous experience, or they could. Also, Jason felt like he was missing a good bit of Foley audio as well. He like walked at times, you could hear him walking, but you didn't really hear a lot of his rustling movements otherwise. You definitely never heard his breathing, even though he's like heavily breathing at times. And I know we're not trying to make Michael Myers like under the mask breathing, but you can do it differently and have the breathing a little bit away from the camera so it doesn't feel like you're in the mask like Michael Myers is when they do the breathing in the Halloween movies. So you could have done that and it would have sold it just a little bit more. Also, when Jason is like doing stuff outside of the kills, it just feels like there's some sounds missing. So I feel like diving a bit more in on the sound design would have been good. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about here is the lighting. The lighting, for the most part, I mean, during the day, you're shooting during the day, so the sun is providing a lot. Everything looked good during the day. During the night, there was some lighting issues, but the one I'm going to focus on is the source lighting. You want to be careful about how you're lighting things to make sure it's consistent through your scene. The one thing I'm going to focus on specifically is if you're shooting an angle and then you cut to another angle, you have to make sure the lighting matches from angle to angle. So at one point, our main girl is running towards the camera, light pouring onto her, right? We're assuming it's either moonlight or something, right? It's got to be moonlight because there's nothing else out there. She's not holding a flare at that point. So she's running towards the light, and then it cuts to a side angle of her running towards a building, and her entire front half is dark, and she's backlit. And it's like, well, wait. My brain was like, wait, did she change directions? Did we cut to her running later? But it was literally her running towards the camera and then cut to her running sideways into a building. It felt like it should have been boom to boom, but the lighting source changed. And so my brain was doing extra work. Again, that pulls me out of the movie. So you have to be careful with certain things about it. Again, credit to the film for being as successful as it was. We talked about some of the successes earlier. Again, specifically, I think Jason was a relative success. I think the close-ups on the gloves were a little iffy at times, but that was really the only thing I thought Jason did well. If you get those sounds in there next time, he's going to sound even more brutal than he sounded this time. But otherwise, I mean, Jason was executed well. Some of the camera angles were executed well. It's a good idea, but you just have to make sure it's executed as well as you possibly can. So, but again, you made a full-length feature. That's huge. Just make sure that your budget is being used as well as it can be. If your budget can only really sustain a solid 45-minute Jason movie, then focus on making a solid 45-minute Jason movie. People will be forgiving, they'll understand, and they'll appreciate that solid of a movie so much, I think. So, nonetheless, back to us to finish everything up.
All right, and we're back to go ahead and say thank you guys very much for watching. If you watched Voorhees, let us know what your thoughts are in those comments down below. I understand some of you guys, this has a big following. There's a lot of people that really enjoyed this movie, and good on them. I know it's the first full-length Jason movie that's been out in a long time, so I understand the feverishness for it. Just necessarily wasn't for us. Doesn't mean it's not going to be for you. So give it your try. We will have the link to the movie in the description box down below. And then if you watch it, come back and let us know what your thoughts are. But hopefully you understand the arguments we were making, and hopefully it didn't come off as hate as opposed to just a legitimate critique of a movie. We're always honest on this channel. We're always going to be honest, friends or no friends, you know, and that's just the case. So we appreciate Cody and all of the access that he's given us. We actually got a shout out, Fuego, in the credits of the movie for social media.
Covering it for a while now.
Yeah, so we appreciate that.
Hell yeah, man.
But we have to be honest, but again, nonetheless, we still applaud the effort. It's a very valiant attempt, and good on you guys for trying it. So thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird,
Robert Duell,
and Gracias, Jaime, and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.